Resident Evil Requiem just dropped a major bombshell about a huge story point in the game, along with showing off a couple of different gameplay scenes and new details if you paid close enough attention. This spans into possible previous characters in the series being killed that we see Grace making a report on all the way back in the announcement trailer. A possible brand new twist to this Umbrella curse, and maybe even the Daylight Serum that has been mentioned before and more. But before we get into that fully, make sure to show off your hype for Resident Evil by scrolling down and hitting those hype, like, and subscribe buttons to help us reach our like goal of 25 likes on this video, and so you don't miss out on any Resident Evil Requiem news as it comes out. Also, consider becoming a member of the channel to be listed and have your approved and chosen images shown at the end of videos, just like this one. So without further ado, let's dive into everything major that was shown off. Let's start off with the quick new details from the brief gameplay shown off recently, and something interesting about the live action trailer. During Nintendo's third-party showcase, they showed off Resident Evil Requiem as it's being launched on Switch 2 consoles as well, where they showed off a little bit of new footage. In this, the major sections were Leon giving us the major dialogue, stating that 6 survivors of Raccoon City all died to the same thing, hinting at the Umbrella curse people have talked about before, where past survivors are being affected by it. And also, we got a brief gameplay snippet of Leon sniping from the top of a building or on a balcony seemingly, confirming the return of a sniper being usable by Leon in this game, where there seems to have been a major explosion of possibly a helicopter crashing, and Grace struggling to get a door open on the far right side while zombies are swarming in. This to me heavily reminds me of the mission in RE4, where Leon is holding off the infected while Ashley is messing with some objects to open up some doors, where Leon fights his own zombies after him while simultaneously also sniping them off Ashley to help her out and so that she doesn't get carried away as well. It also makes me wonder if there will be multiple scenarios like this in the game where Grace or Leon have to help each other out, as we know their story in this game will be heavily intertwined. And we'll be having them going through some of the same locations back to back, where they can access previously inaccessible areas or loot as they traverse each location. The new gameplay also shows off how much a parry actually costs with Leon if you pay attention. Something like the chainsaw parry fully drains the durability bar of the hatchet, as we've seen before where Leon has to immediately sharpen the hatchet again, while something like a regular blow from a weapon just takes a decent chunk instead. That is pretty much all of the new things from the new gameplay, but real quick, I did want to touch on something from the live action trailer for the game as well. Not only was it an awesome trailer and made me want a full live action series or movie done in this quality, but the ending does have some implication to how long the zombies' human habits last as well. In this live action trailer, we see a mother and daughter battling for survival where they eventually, like most others, fall to the outbreak. But even though they were infected sometime during the initial Raccoon City outbreak, sometime later, and I mean a long time until they took Raccoon City back later, we still see the mother clutching onto the family photo post-infection and even visiting what is apparently her daughter's grave with her stuffed animal from earlier in the trailer as a zombie. Not only that, but think about it. The mother herself is a Raccoon City infected, not an Elpis infected zombie. So seeing a zombie have human traits and for this long has me thinking about our last video and theory where I mentioned maybe Elpis and the Raccoon City's infection are a bit more tied together than everyone initially thinks. With RE3 Remake's whole Brad and Marvin scene, and now Elpis having confirmed human traits in their infection in the recent showcase, it seems like it's not just being freshly infected that makes the zombies have human habits, nor is it exclusive to the new infection we think we're getting in Resident Evil Requiem, and is something I think we need to heavily keep in mind moving forward. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the meats and potatoes and the reason you probably clicked on this video. What exactly is going on with what Leon said in the recent trailer about 6 survivors of Raccoon City all being dead to the same thing? To understand my whole thought process and everything in question, make sure to catch my train of thought by catching them in my previous theory videos. I'll give you a quick catch up in this one prior to everything, but to understand my entire thought process and all the other theories that I'll be mentioning, Make sure to check them out, as they are also timestamped so you can jump quickly to those exact sections as well. And all of them will be linked down below in the description of this very video. Well, to start us all off, let's go all the way back to the initial announcement trailer for Resident Evil 9, where when we first see Grace, she is actually typing up an investigation summary report on a case, where she surmised that a deceased individual was discovered in an abandoned government office. Preliminary analysis suggests the deceased may be linked to a series of, and then she gets cut off by her boss, where he wants her to look at a new body that turned up at the Renwood Hotel where her mother was murdered. If you look at the images shown on screen as well, it looks more like it's a body in the woods or like a heavily destroyed building, not just a regular government building, with the person being dead in the pictures being a white male. It also says below the pictures, 4th victim of an unidentified disease. Now, at first I thought it was Elpis, but now I think it's something worse than I initially thought. First, let's break down the timeline of events. Before the new body was discovered that Grace has to investigate, we have 4 possibly confirmed to be killed off by this new disease, if the preliminary report Grace is typing is indeed accurate. And in this new gameplay trailer, Leon mentions that 6 are dead, all in the same way. In my opinion, I think Leon and Grace are investigating the same case from different departments, and this is why they meet up or are interlinked like this in Resident Evil 9 in the first place. Then, Grace goes to check out this possibly new 5th body that's come up due to this mysterious disease, and that's why her boss wants her eyes on it, since she's already very familiar with evidence that could point to this disease being the reason the person died. Which, by the way, I'm still super suspicious her boss is in on the whole thing with Victor Gideon, which eventually will lead to her getting captured by Gideon himself at that 5th body location, and why she ends up at the care center. We know that this is the reason that she sent on the case as well, since when he tells her about investigating the case in the first place, he mentions, "This body inhibits the same pathology as the others we've been investigating." Basically, it's just him saying it shows signs that this body could be the same as the other prior 4 in this mysterious disease case. Now, with a little bit of blank time in the middle, it looks like Leon possibly also investigates this 5th body and learns about the missing police officer. Then visits a 6th body, which he's mentioning here at this newest gameplay trailer, where then he eventually gets some sort of clue or reason to book a visit with Victor Gideon. And that's where he eventually runs into Grace and has no idea why an FBI agent is there while he's following his leads. Now, before breaking into what I think this mysterious disease actually is, let's also remember what I think Elpis is. Elpis, from what I'm seeing, seems to be based around or use the daylight serum in its biology. The daylight serum is shown as a white serum in Resident Evil Outbreak, where survivors of Raccoon City use this to quote-unquote cure the virus from the Raccoon City outbreak. Major named survivors are of course the Outbreak cast of characters, and also mainline legacy characters like Leon, Claire, Jill, Carlos, Ada, and Sherry. I believe the Elpis virus shows its daylight roots by having some zombies have white eyes, and with white hair some of the infected exhibit. Namely the sound infected that yell at you in the Grace and Leon gameplay shown recently in the Resident Evil showcase, and the hag from the first demo. This game obviously has Resident Evil Outbreak as canon and relevant, since Grace is Alyssa Ashcroft's daughter, one of the major characters of the game's cast and survivor group. Like I said, at first I thought these deaths being shown were from Elpis itself, but unless it's a different or more concentrated version of Elpis, shouldn't these people dying just turn into zombies instead? So then I was re-looking up the daylight serum again. I was searching through its wiki, where I found this major piece of information under the tab labeled effectiveness. This suggests that the drug is capable of completely eliminating the T-virus from the infected host. However, its true nature is somewhat debatable, as Peter Jenkins' diary instead describes daylight as an inhibitor/suppressant, implying that it may not fully cure the infection, but rather halt its progress and neutralize its effects, which in my opinion completely changes the game. So of course I had to go ahead and look up the diary entry and found an old FAQ that listed the diary entry in question. It says, Peter's diary, location, Student Affairs Office, August 30th. Reagent creation is at its final stage. When it is completed, we will finally have a means to stop that wretched T-virus. I heard about Umbrella's heinous dealings from an ex-head researcher named Greg. I wouldn't have been able to create this reagent without his expertise and assistance, Using viral research for personal gain is unforgivable. We named this reagent Daylight. You don't need an umbrella in the daylight. I find the name quite suits the reagent considering its main purpose. September 15th. I received the T sample from Greg and tested Daylight on it. It's still not at all stable, but it is still managing to suppress the growth of the T viral cell. Victory is nigh. Come to think of it, how did Greg obtain the T sample? He told me a friend secretly got him a sample, but he thinks he's being chased by Umbrella. Is he hiding something from me? Well, I shouldn't snoop. A few pages have been torn out. September 19th. It seems I've been totally mistaken. How could Greg do such terrible things? It seems this has all been a ruse. He planned everything from the start. There must be a reason why he rushed me to complete Daylight. Am I the only one other than Greg that knows how to create the compound? Is my life in danger? I should just play dumb for a while. And then the final page states that he discarded the T sample, hid the compound instructions, and contacted George. Now I think it's also important to note that the George contacted at the final page is actually one of the main playable characters in Resident Evil Outbreak, as he's a playable character and an NPC that you can find throughout the game if you don't play as him, at least from what I've seen here in the documents. And the diary of whom we're reading is of course the creator of the Daylight Serum. Greg, who is also mentioned, is of course one of the main antagonists in Resident Evil Outbreak, who at the end gets killed by Nikolai, after Nikolai collects the unique Tyrant Thanatos sample that Greg created, which was one of his main missions to actually go ahead and retrieve. Nikolai, if you recall, is who we see in RE3 Remake as a major antagonist in there as well, which, wait a minute, also has a brand new line from everything I've seen anyways when compared to the original, just like the brand new Brad and Marvin scene that I said in my previous video may imply Elpis ties all the way back in the Raccoon City incident. In Resident Evil 3 Remake, Nikolai says, "I'll tell you if you get me out of here. I'll pay you whatever you want. You're a fool. You're a fool. If I die, you'll never find out the truth." Which is the last line he says to Jill before he's left on Raccoon City to die to the nukes by Jill and Carlos. Remember in my last video where I mentioned it's possible they were planting seeds in these remakes to push their new narratives in these newer games? It looks like the more and more we see of Requiem's main plot that this seems to be the case. Now it's time for theory crafting. What if the entire reason that he was sent to retrieve this new strain of Tyrant, being the Thanatos Tyrant in RE Outbreak, was because of someone like Gideon, who was trying to refine his Elpis serum, which again, I think is based off of getting immortality, possibly for himself, but also maybe even for Oswald E. Spencer, who is, now this is a long shot, possibly frozen or preserved in a cryopod, which we see a brief glimpse of, or at least I think so, in the initial announcement trailer to have him go ahead and try to live forever. Wow, I feel like Charlie Day in that one meme with connecting all the dots on the bulletin board, but to me, I see it clear as day, or in this case, daylight. Everything Outbreak, the new inserted scenes in Resident Evil 3's Remake, Elpis, the Raccoon City infection, all of it might be tied together to culminate into the grand reveals that this story could possibly have. And when it comes down to it, who are the dead people who are popping up due to this mystery infection? And what is it exactly? Well, I think the people dying or showing up dead are all the people who were exposed to the Raccoon City infection, were infected, but were saved by the Daylight Serum and its suppressive nature. But eventually, and I'm talking years down the line because we're 30 years removed now, succumbed to the disease and ended up dying in a mix of the Daylight Serum and the infection in their body. These 6 people, more than likely being a mix of people from the Outbreak cast, with Alyssa Ashcroft not being counted among the 6 because of it being chalked up to a murder, not an infection case, years before all of this started happening. So these 6 people could be some of the people we had the ability to play as in Resident Evil Outbreak. Overall, I do strongly feel like these remakes, especially Resident Evil 3 with the things that we've seen so far, are planting some seeds for Resident Evil 9 elements to make a bit more sense. And I really want to find out who exactly these survivors are that are dying. or if it's just like Person X and Person Y who also happen to make it out along with the cast that we know from Outbreak and the legacy characters like Claire, Jill, etc., right? I know they've told us to keep our expectations low recently for legacy characters returning, but I don't know. I still think we'll have some sort of character roundup at some point in this game's story, just they won't be playable, especially since if even some of the theories we've been cooking up are right, it's teeing up to be a really epic conclusion to the Raccoon City arc. And if we are concluding Raccoon City as a whole, I feel like we're not really getting full closure unless people like Claire or Jill get to see it through to the end as well. Will essentially reviving Spencer really be Gideon's endgame? Was Elpis really always the end goal when accidentally causing the Raccoon City incident? And was the Raccoon City incident even an accident? Or did they need live adaptations of the virus to get to Elpis? Truly, I have no idea. But from the breadcrumbs we've been given so far, the clues in previous games, and even the recent trailers, I'm super excited and invested to find out what the story for Resident Evil Requiem will end up being. And if we were right on any of our theories, I'll be pretty ecstatic. And don't even get me started on the gameplay. Man, it just looks cooler and cooler every time I see it. And I can't wait to have constant scares and action when switching between Grace and Leon. But anyways guys, that's all I have for you all today. Let me know what you guys think of my theory, who you think the 6 people who have been killed to the mystery infection are, and let me know your thoughts on the live action trailer in the comment section down below. For everyone who's made it this far, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. As always, your support through your viewership, liking, and subscribing is always greatly appreciated and helps me out tremendously against the Elpis threat that is the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you guys next time. Peace!